The reactions to Stranger Things Season 5 range from incredibly funny, incredibly creative. This is getting a little bit too disturbing for me.
No. Wait. Wait.
No! God, please, no! No!
Welcome back to Torn Apart, and today we're gonna be talking about something that I've actually never covered on my channel. I'm gonna try to not rant for as long as possible because every single day that passes through, I end up hating Stranger Things Season 5 more and more, and I need to give you context. I cannot just go deep into the plot twists, into every single spoiler that you can imagine. We have to go through things bit by bit, and actually today we're gonna be deconstructing everything together because I gathered quite a lot of things through Twitter, and I was like, you know what, I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who found a lot of problems with this last season, and specifically with the last episode. So we're gonna be commenting on your tweets and expanding on them, giving you my interpretation of everything that went through with the behind the scenes of this season. And now also we can contextualize Stranger Things within basically the entire streaming era and beyond that as well, because we're going to be talking a little bit about Game of Thrones and a little bit about Arcane as well. We're going to be talking about how different characters are treated, whether they are men or women, across pop culture. And I've noticed that there is definitely a little bit of a bias, especially when it comes to sacrificing your main characters in the last few episodes before everything comes crumbling down.
Mother of God.
It starts with
One thing, I don't know why. It doesn't even matter how hard you try.
Let's start talking about Stranger Things, specifically what my emotional attachment to it was. Like, it started back in 2016, if I'm not mistaken, and I just came out of uni, and to be honest, I was definitely grasping for some nostalgia because I was traveling around. I came back to my home country. I lost most of my friends. Stranger Things basically came at the most perfect time possible when you think about it. And even though I was not one of those nerdy teenagers who used to play D&D, I used to play quite a lot of those fantasy games, but already on my computer. And also definitely related to the fact of having a group of nerdy friends that basically you went through high school all together and you never left each other basically, and you always did things together. And of course we all had zero expectations when it came to this show. Netflix had basically just started. This is one of the shows that made it famous, and the 80s were not really popular back then. Like, I was trying to look through other movies, other TV shows that were exploiting that kind of 80s neon vibes back then, but there weren't that many. Even Guardians of the Galaxy, which came out I think 2 years before Stranger Things, that was probably the only thing I could think of that started the 80s as a vibe, like Renaissance. But Stranger Things made it insane. Like, after Stranger Things, there were so many other shows trying to emulate it, tried to recapture that nostalgic magic from the 80s, all the Ghostbuster vibes, all the references to Steven Spielberg filmography as well. It was a magical moment that we all shared, and I feel like I've never met almost anyone that hasn't enjoyed some parts of Stranger Things. Even my family ended up catching up Stranger Things, and we actually watched the final season together, just to say that across different generations, everyone loved Stranger Things, but there was no one that loved Stranger Things more than Gen Z as well.
Chrissy, wake up! I don't like this! Chrissy, wake up!
I feel like Stranger Things gained a new audience with season 4 that made it go completely insane, and I'm pretty sure that this is also one of the main reasons why season 5 was so long awaited, but was also such a waste of creativity at the end of the day, because there were so many things that needed to come together, so many different puzzle pieces, so many different characters, so many different journeys as well that were supposed to end here, and the Duffer Brothers probably tried tried to do their best. As in, they were trying to tell this story that was probably supposed to end by season 2, if not even by season 1 at the end of the day, because you could tell that almost every single time that a season ended, there was either a cliffhanger, a character disappearing, being supposed dead, for example, that was supposed to come back in the next season. They basically did this Game of Thrones things constantly. The idea of, is this character actually dead? Do you want to theorize? Do you want to spend years and years of your life thinking about whether this person that you actually grew attached to is alive? Stranger Things was famous mostly because they were doing it to children. Like the first season, that episode basically when they find the body of someone who they think is Will was one of the most like traumatizing experiences of that time. And also because this is a binge watching kind of show, it kind of like redefined the way that we watched things as well. And it's also a series that is like 8 or 10 episodes long, never more. And it never actually overstayed its welcome, as in every single season they introduce new characters, new villains. There is a lot of blood, there is a lot of budget. It's taken seriously, it's very adult oriented, even though it has like those 80s vibes. It's more like a dark Goonies interpretation of the 80s. It's not that kind of flashy, campy 80s that we usually think of when you look at horror films, for example. And I loved almost every single season. The first one, of course, is incredible. The second one, for me, even though it works really well from a storytelling perspective because it's kind of like tying up all the different bows that were set up in the first season, it was a bit underwhelming. The third season was really interesting because it reinvigorated kind of like the upside down and everything we knew about that subject. Season 4 was incredible. Like season 4 is honestly one of the best seasons of TV that I've ever seen. A lot of people say that they did a mistake by trying to separate it with volume 1 and volume 2 because it's kind of repeating themselves and shooting themselves in the foot, especially when it comes to the pacing of the show. But when you look at the entire journey, when you look at how they set up Vecna, like that has immediately become one of the most iconic villains ever created. Also, the idea of playing on the satanic panic theme of the 80s that was very popular back then, it made instantly the series more mature, and it kind of forced our main group to become adults as well. They had to stop being children to survive what was happening to them in the 4th season. And the 5th season is basically a repetition of that, once again with zero fun. If I could start by criticizing something about this season, is that it's not fun. You could tell from a mile apart what they're trying to set up episode from episode. There are no big plot twists when you think about it. Yes, they introduce new things, but they're just adding like toppings on top of a cake that was already starting to get a little bit too complicated, especially if you look at all the different like Russian subplots that they started introducing in season 3 and 4. It was a bit too much, and they kept adding and adding and adding, and they did that storytelling wise with the universe, but they did that with the characters as well. And I actually found a very interesting tweet that once I read that, I was like, yeah, you should have done that. Like if you structured the show this way, the stakes would have been different and the feeling of being with these characters would have changed completely. I completely agree with all of these changes. These would have made everything way more interesting. For example, Hopper disappearing would have completely changed dynamic in the group because it's Eleven who is always looking up to her father figure, and there is this tension between them where she wants to be the hero of the story, but he's not allowing her to. But we are in the 5th season of a horror sci-fi show. Like at this point, our main hero needs to play the hero. We can't keep putting her on the bench for most of the game and bring her out at the very end or as a Deus Ex Machina. So that was one thing that would have been fixed if Hopper wasn't there. The Max thing, even though it would have been incredibly sad, it would have made sense because it would have made season 4 feel even more tragic, because as it was ending, you didn't know what was going to happen to her, and just the fact that they resurrected her so easily felt like a cheap storytelling trick. Same thing goes for Will. There are so many people calling out plot holes when it comes to his connection to the hive mind, his superpowers which manifested kind of out of nowhere because we thought he was just a victim throughout the entire 5 seasons of this show, and it turned out that he could actually turn this thing around so that he could control the Demogorgons. Oh, by the way, I completely forgot to say that spoiler alert. I'm not gonna be talking about the last season of Stranger Things without going into spoilers. It would be completely insane. But as I was saying, what this person was pointing out is the fact that there are so many characters that have been introduced, and at this point they're shooting themselves in the foot from a writing perspective when they have to give them a conclusion. This is also why the last episode of the show has 40 minutes, which are dedicated just to wrapping up all the different subplots and character journeys as fast as possible. And also this is why so many people are disappointed, because so many things are just not appearing in the show anymore, which were labeled as important in the previous seasons. And I'm talking mostly about character dynamics, for example, like Max's mom, who's just completely disappeared, or Dustin's girlfriend, which has not even gotten a mention. It would have been so easy to give her a mention in just a couple of like dialogue lines. But the problem is that it's fascinating because this final season of Stranger Things is both way too short and way too long. Like while I was watching volume 1, I was like, there is literally nothing happening here besides in the last episode, the episode where Will showcases his superpowers and kind of changes the dynamic of the group, because 11 is not the only one actually being able to do something. But at the end of the day, the investigation on what Vecna's plan was kind of pointless, because it was a very easy plan to activate. And I feel like Stranger Things season 5 could have almost been a movie, like a 3-hour movie, which would have developed everything way better, especially pacing wise, because it really feels like every single episode is just a repetition of something that has been already told to you previously. And a lot of people pointed out the fact that dialogues are also abysmal, and they're abysmal in a way that they constantly give you exposition. They repeat it to each other as if like the writers or the showrunners, whoever it is, they expect everyone to be on their phone and not pay attention to what is actually happening on screen, and it's completely annoying.
Vecna's a spooky, scary skeleton. Holly and Will are in his ribcage. Exactly. Which is the Upside Down's mind palace. And this demo is trying to get home because Vecna's homophobic. Yes. So
because this is a really expensive season of TV, of course we're gonna be paying attention. Come on. This is Stranger Things we're talking about. So I really feel like the writers didn't really trust the audiences. Like they marketed the shit out of this season being like, oh, this thing is gonna be super important. Oh, pay attention to this date. Pay attention to this and to this and to this. But the thing is, when you're asking us to pay attention to so many details which don't end up being like incredible, like reveals, well, you've got an audience that is primed to start paying attention to everything. And this is also why the Duffer Brothers have started like coming out and talking about shit about so many different like things, trying to fill in all of the different plot holes with other shit at the end of the day. For example, one thing that is clear is that even though they had a huge budget for this show, I have no idea where it went for most episodes. Like I get it for the last episode and I get it for the episode with Will's power, but if you look at the Upside Down, it looks completely like shit. You can't really like see everything properly most of the time. It really feels like they put a filter on everyone's faces, and it's not a scary place anymore. Well, it used to be like hell on earth, especially if you look at season 4. Most of the creatures have disappeared and they just appear when the plot demands them to, or where Vecna is commanding them. Basically, these creatures, which have been established as creatures from another place, they don't do anything if Vecna doesn't tell them to do something. So it's incredibly annoying, because if Vecna is busy, we have no idea where all of these creatures are. And this allows our main characters to do incredibly like convoluted shit, like walking around from one place to the other in the Upside Down. And there is no danger, there is no tension. Like they need to manufacture tension some way or another by putting the military, for example. The military subplot is completely disgusting in this season here, completely useless. They also didn't use the actress really well, and you know who I'm talking about. Like she's basically not even a character. That's maybe why they give that role to a person that is that famous, because then they don't even need to write it, because the charisma is gonna speak for itself. But from our perspective, the military were completely useless. But the main problem I have with this season has to be the fact that they killed off 11, and we need to talk about that, because otherwise we'll spend so much time looking at all the different like plot holes, and it's gonna drive us insane. Maybe at the end of the video I'm gonna come back and list you way more things that worried me. But now we have to talk about the elephant in the room, which is the fact, is 11 dead, yes or no? And what is purpose of killing a character like that? There are so many of you being like, this is a girl who's been abused, this is a girl who has literally had a normal life for only 4 years of her life. life, and that normal life was actually spent fighting Demogorgons, the military, and being in hiding, not having an actual childhood most of the times, and then she gets sacrificed for no reason whatsoever. And it's also one of the worst messages you could convey to young people out there and to women as well. She's been such a strong character, carrying everyone on their shoulder and always appearing at the right time to save her friends. Like, this is a person who literally didn't know what a friend was back in season 1. She was literally like emotionally and psychologically and mentally like handicapped, as in she couldn't really talk, she couldn't really like emote properly. She was just angry, and she had these powers that she didn't know how to control. So this person came out of nowhere, out of nothing, and became an actual human being that we could care of, you know? And it's a hard thing to do from a writing perspective. Like, if you give a blank canvas sort of character to a TV writer, it's really, really hard to make her interesting. And I feel like Eleven and Millie Bobby Brown as well, who was incredible back then, and I feel like it's not even her fault at this point. I feel like she just got tired of not getting any more to do as Eleven, because her character development basically stopped maybe last season. In this season, she had nothing to do but accept the fact that maybe she doesn't belong in this world because she is the problem. But that is the thing, like, it's such a bad thing to tell people, because even though like it took her such effort to create these relationships with people, to grow past the trauma that she's been through, like at the lab and at the different hospitals and while she was in hiding as well, she's managed to create a family of her own. And to tell people that even though you survived all of this, there is nothing you can do, even though you killed the main villain and you literally destroyed this Godzilla-like creature by yourself and with the help of your friends, you still do not deserve to live a normal life. What is this message telling young women out there who are maybe suffering through different traumas, sexual assault, humiliation, or even just normal everyday life? What are you telling them? You're just telling them that when life is too hard, just kill yourself. Because yes, that is a message of Stranger Things season 5. Hopper was the character that embodied that kind of like toxic message, and he kept that with him across every single season. And I get it, it's a trope for a reason. The alcoholic kind of like sarcastic man figure, and he slowly grew out of that, but just because that character trait was just moved to 11, which is so disturbing, which is so fucked up, and I hated that so much. Of course, there are so many like readings out there being like, oh no, 11 is alive, that there is no way that they killed her. They even showed like a fantasy sequence where Mike is like, she's probably alive out there somewhere walking around, and then you get like the most awful looking footage of her in Iceland or in some place out there. They kind of look like a car commercial. This is also why I feel like some of the most emotional moments of this season just didn't work out, because they didn't fully embrace them. Like, emotionally speaking, you're sitting there being like, is she dead or is she not dead? Like, if you want us to be ambiguous about it, then you should have done what you did with Arcane, with Jinx, where you sort of get an impression that maybe she has managed to escape through one of the spaceship and she just left, because I think you can see a spaceship like leaving the town at some point. That was one of the main theories. It needs to be subtle. You cannot do this kind of like fantasy like thing so that people can even like imagine maybe that she's in heaven and people still care about her. This is so fucked up when you think about it, because there are so many things going against this theory. The idea that the other sister basically using her powers to create a vision of her doing all of these things while she had been shot and she was bleeding out to death, knowing that the lab itself in the Upside Down is one of the first few things that exploded because the C4 was there, and that we didn't get any scene of 11 moving her sister out, for example. People have been talking about the fact that maybe she's been a vision all along. That would be the only reason on how it would work, because they had those machines working basically at Hawkins next to the Upside Down like door. So 11 couldn't use her powers. 11 couldn't actually like bring Mike into the void to give that final goodbye message to him. She couldn't use her powers. She didn't get her nosebleed at the end, so there is no way that she's dead, right? It's impossible. Also, the way that she disappeared felt almost like a vision disappearing more than actually her being swept away by literally like the vacuum of space into a fucking black hole, you know? But at the same time, what was the purpose of that? Because even if she's not dead, even if she's not conveying the message that at at the end of the day it's better to die than to live a life running away from the cops, the military, and maybe hurting her friends in the meantime. This is just leaving her alone for the rest of her life. Everyone gets a happy ending, and we get like 40 minutes of every single main character that you can imagine in the show getting his own version of a happy ending. And she's alone. She's gonna spend the rest of her life alone. That's at least what the series is telling us, and that really pissed me off. And this is a trend that has been going on for a long time. This is a trend that's been going on for a long time that I call basically sacrificing your main female lead to empower other characters that often are guys, or even just because it is emotionally more impactful to see a woman die at the end. Just because fridging is an actual storytelling technique. If you don't know what it is, it's basically when you give someone motivation, a character specifically in a movie or in a TV show, by killing his love interest, his mother, his special woman friend. So basically you're killing someone off to elevate someone so that they can become the hero of their own story. And this time around it has to do with Mike, basically, who wants to move on from 11 to create something out of his life. That fucking sucks. And they did that, by the way, with Jinx as well in Arcane, even though with Jinx it's a little bit more complicated because there are more like mental health things going on, and also because there is no other guy. It's Vi. It's basically she's doing that because she's not 100% sure that she'll be able not to be a Jinx and ruin her sister's life. But if you think about another very popular show that a lot of people hated, especially in the last season, Game of Thrones.
Dany kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet and Euron's forces.
She forgot?
She forgot? She forgot?
Dany kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet.
Yeah, Dany kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet.
They did that with Dany, where they basically ruined her character for the entire season, only to turn her into a villain, even though she had been the hero almost for the entire like story. And then they killed her off to make sure that Jon Snow was the actual hero of the story. And here they're doing the same thing to 11, because if you think about it, you know that scene where we're talking about Will being gay, for example?
Volevo dirvi che sono gay.
Che cazzo c'entra? Ci fa piacere, ma sta finendo il mondo. Abbiamo appena fatto 4 ore di riunione su come uccidere Vecna.
Me lo tenevo dentro da un po'.
E sti cazzi. Gay. A me piacciono i trans.
Non è importante ora, ragazzi, porco.
And a lot of people were making fun of Eleven's reaction / Millie Bobby Brown's performance, but that has to do with the writing, as in she's been good in other movies, she's been good throughout the series, and I do not believe that she all of a sudden became bad just for this last season, especially because this season had a lot of stakes, emotionally speaking, so many things that had to pay off. So for me, if you look at this season and if you step away, you could really tell that they took away a lot of the story from 11, and that's why also people ended up enjoying the last episode, because it brought us back to what we liked about season 4 as well and the previous seasons. She's our main hero. She's the hero of the story. So of course, if you put her against Embry / Vecna in a fight for the sake of the universe, it's gonna be entertaining to watch. This is the only episode where she became that, because most of the other episodes either Hopper was keeping her down or other characters were becoming the main characters. Like Holly had more screen time than any of the other characters in the show for this season, and I don't think it was a good idea. I do understand that they wanted to set up the idea of, oh, there is a new generation of children that is gonna basically live out the same kind of childhood that Mike and the gang did. I get that, but they could have explored that in a completely different way without taking away time from our main characters and without freezing most of their character development until we get to the final 40 minutes where we are like, oh shit, we have to wrap things up and we have to make sure that we know that all of these people are gonna be fine. And it's funny because I never cried in this season, and I did cry in season 4. I clearly remember that, and I feel like I didn't cry because it really felt like they wanted us to feel good about everything happening with these characters. Just the idea that no one died for me was a shame. If you see online, a lot of people said that, and it's kind of fucked up. When you love something and you love a lot of characters, why would you want them to die? You know what I mean? I feel like this is the perfect representation of the feeling that we knew that their character journeys had ended and there was nowhere else for them to go, at least because the writers didn't give us an out. And this is also why the breakup between, for example, Nancy Nancy and Jonathan didn't work out for most people, because it felt like two people actually finally discussing everything that they wanted to talk about, but they never had the time, just because the world was always ending and because there was always something else happening. But no, it was a breakup. But it didn't feel like a breakup. It just felt like two people having a really, really intense argument and realizing that there were a lot of things that they needed to talk about and they never had. But the internet understood that differently, because there was no way that across all of these seasons we built them up as this very interesting and perfect couple, and Nancy as a character had grown so much as well and had grown so independent. There was nowhere else for her to go. Like, I really do not understand why season 5 was trying to make her even more independent, to the point that she kind of became a pastiche version of herself. At the end of the day, I saw her and I was looking at Rambo, I was looking at Sigourney Weaver in Alien. I was not looking at her character anymore. I was looking at writers turning her into an 80s cliche. And because she was an 80s cliche, she had to become even more independent, go into third wave feminism by herself, do everything that she wanted to do, even though like Jonathan never stopped her from doing what she wanted to do. And actually, like when they have that scene at the top of the Radio Shack, Jonathan became a filmmaker and he seemed to have a great life, while Nancy actually gave up on her studies and became a journalist. But it really felt like Jonathan was the one who actually made something out of his life. And I never had the impression that Nancy was the one keeping Jonathan down. They were both lifting each other up. Same thing goes with Steve. At the end of the day, like many people have pointed out, he ends up like becoming like the sports teacher at school. He never leaves Hawkins and he's still obsessed about just dating women and having a lot of kids apparently, even though this was never set up. Every single thing that they laid out here in the final minutes, and I've seen all of these people cry as they were just embracing each other and making plans about how they were gonna see each other every single month after that. I was sitting there being like, I've lived through those things, but it never felt this way. It's kind of insane how it felt like the stars themselves saying goodbye to the show instead of the characters reacting in a normal way. Because I'd never felt nostalgic about high school when I came out of high school. No one does, because there is so many incredible bad things about high school. There is a very small percentage of people who are actually nostalgic of high school and they cry about it almost immediately as they leave it. And all of these people acted like that. Every single one of these characters was sad because they were leaving something behind. And even when there is that scene at the D&D like game, that scene was incredibly well made, and the idea of them once again crying as they finally finished this campaign and they realized that they finished it without Elle, even though Elle didn't even have like a character sheet, that really fucked me up. I was like, you could have at least shown that she had a folder so that we would know that they were crying because of that, and they were not just crying because this is the end of an era, we're gonna go to university and we're never gonna see each other ever again. I saw a montage of Elle and Max being happy in the previous seasons, and all of these characters also having a good time and being kids and enjoying just life. And I was looking at all of these people being miserable, and I didn't really want to be part of that. Like, I was looking at these people and I was sitting there being like, this sucks. Like, this was traumatizing for everyone. This wasn't satisfying from a writing perspective because there were so many different things that just were delayed for no reason whatsoever. For example, I don't think that Vecna should have outstayed his welcome. I feel like he shouldn't have survived season 4. It made no absolute sense. And this is also why a lot of people were like, why did it take them 6 minutes to get rid of Vecna? Why was it that easy? But of course it was that easy. They literally defeated him in the previous season. So of course this season is gonna be at least as easy as the previous season it was, if you know what I mean. Like, he doesn't really gain any new powers when you think about it. He's just the same old Vecna trying to achieve a new plan. It kind of feels like a season 4+1. It doesn't really feel like a season 5. Do you know what I mean? And this is also why I think it should have ended with season 4, because there was no way they were gonna keep the momentum up there. There is that moment at the end of season 4 where you see Hawkins being completely destroyed and you're like, oh, this is gonna be the apocalypse. Season 5 is gonna be be insane. They're gonna be demogorgons going around everywhere, destroying everything, and our gang of people are gonna basically be at war, maybe even teaming up with the military and doing something like that to fight against all of these people and trying to close all the doors. But no, literally in the first 5 minutes of the new episode in season 5, they're like, oh, we literally put some steel band-aids on top of them and the military are now occupying the town. That's that. That's completely insane. And this is the problem with the structure of this season here. They had to bring the stakes down again to raise them up with something mysterious that we didn't know about. Like Vecna's past, for example. We already discovered a lot of things, but we didn't know everything. Vecna's plan has now changed. We need to find out what his new plan is. And because of that, they had to bring everything back to a stalemate so we could bring the tension up again, up, until we get to basically the final episode. This guy, for example, made a list and was talking about the fact that Susie and Dustin never officially break up, and I actually mentioned this as well. Also, since Wills is part of the hive mind, if the brain dies, the body dies. That's what was established in the last few seasons. Yet he was completely fine after both the Mind Flayer and Vecna died, and this was a classic screenwriting thing where it would hurt him only when it was important to the plot. Like, for example, when they're reliving Vecna's memory of him touching the stone, it hurts his hand as well. But when Eleven is fighting Vecna, he doesn't feel any of that. So once again, it's stupid. Like, Vecna was literally defeated in the previous season, and you're telling me that he does not expect that these kids are gonna come and meddle with him once again. Scooby-Doo gang, come on, this is absolutely insane. Actually, you should be completely paranoid. Actually, I think that the Abyss should be crawling with Demogorgons, Demodogs, Demobats, and whatever the fuck. And the final act of this show should have been them fighting through armies of Demogorgons instead of fighting a giant like spider, which they cannot vanquish because we have just one superpowered person. Everyone else is an Hawkeye, like, or even worse than an Hawkeye, because some of them can't even shoot. So that's why also, like, the stakes of this season were completely insane. These are still kids, like, these are not like trained military personnel. So a lot of things that keep happening in this show, you're sitting there being like, this is becoming ridiculous. I'm not believing this anymore. And this is a show that has a lot of really weird things happening, and I'm not believing the bare minimum. Like them outsmarting the army, like, once again, even though like people have been outsmarting them season after season after season. Killing so many of them and not having any repercussions, it just makes no sense. It kind of breaks the universe for me. Like, if you break the suspension of disbelief, then even the easiest things possible, like two characters hugging each other or talking about their feelings or sharing the fact that they're gay, those things are gonna seem pointless. They're not gonna seem as valid just because you've made things so ridiculous with other things in the past. I mean, he keeps saying that children are weak, but you've clearly proven, like, as Will, that he's not that weak. So that should shock Vecna. That should even scare Vecna, but he's never scared, and that is one reason why a lot of the action sequences don't really work. It's literally like he has become the Freddy Krueger version of later like movies, where he believes too much on himself and no one else is taking him seriously at this point. I feel like after seeing so much violence and surviving so much, Hopper would not want to go back to the police station. Like, it makes no absolute sense, and he shouldn't be able to do that. There are so many things that happen in Hawkins where people have just such a short memory for it that I was like, are we in Derry? Are we in Welcome to Derry? Like, is there like a supernatural force that is like making everyone forget about the incredible weird shit that happens there? Even the scene where Vicky thinks that Robin is on drugs makes no absolute sense, especially when she tells them about the Demogorgon and all the creatures. Has she not lived in the town? Has she not heard about any of the things that has happened there in the last few years? Once again, suspension of disbelief completely broken. Like, if characters don't immediately buy the things that people are saying when they've definitely lived in the town for a while, then you're sitting there being like, why are we doing this? What is the purpose of all of this? I'm pretty sure if the Mind Flayer actually like exited the Abyss and went to Hawkins and started killing people and destroying like buildings instead of just being in the middle of a desert, it would have been way more interesting. And actually, like, that's why I was pitching like a different version of this finale, which have been so much more interesting. Think about maybe basically them having to kill an army of Demogorgons, trying to weaken and trying to distract Vecna as much as possible so 11 can have her one-on-one fight. So that part can still work out. Or if you want to have the Mind Flayer, then you need to do something with him outside of just taking me out in the desert. For example, you could have a scene where Vecna is like, oh, I know that I'm about to die. You know what? I do not have the power to bring these two worlds together, but I'm gonna do one thing that is even worse. I'm gonna bring the physical version of the Mind Flayer to Hawkins. And he does that. He does that, and once Vecna is killed and they're like, oh, we won, they realize that the Mind Flayer has been sent to the real world, and now we have the real third act where all the main characters have to work with the military, give them what they know to destroy the Mind Flayer. That would have been so much more interesting. Jesus fucking Christ. Because right now, all of these people like running around in CGI landscapes that look like shit, fighting this Godzilla-like creature, this kaiju monster, insane. Completely insane and completely stupid. I also don't think that the children should have survived. Like, I'm sitting here being like, who would I have killed in the main cast, right? And I think if you want to introduce like these new characters, these new 12 children that he needs to activate his plan, then you need to kill some of them off, because it's becoming a little bit weird. Like the idea of basically like Max being in Henry's mind, trying to steal like Holly from him, managing to steal all the children from him later on, and Vecna not being completely pissed off. Like this time around we have a Vecna that has been almost killed in the last season, so I don't even understand why he didn't send like armies and armies of Demogorgons to everyone's house to kill them so that he could actually achieve his plan way easier. Like, it makes no sense. He shouldn't underestimate the Scooby gang that we have here, because they've literally traced him down to his base once already and they almost killed him. Why is he not like using all of his energy to keep them occupied with other creatures, other new creature, for example, that they could have introduced, so that he can do his plan, and they realize what he's trying to do too late in the very last episode. So my rewriting of the final episode basically would have been about the kids escaping with Max and Holly, and Vecna being completely pissed off and being like, you know what, I actually do not need all of these kids. And he starts taking them out one by one, and absorbing basically their power or their life energy. That could have been something that is new and introduced, something that he has learned to do, basically steal other people's lives energy, and specifically children as well, because they have the potential of living like really long lives and become more and more powerful. Because when you think about it, Vecna has nothing new. He has no new tricks to show. While our gang has new tricks, like you can see with Will, and you could see with Elle, and you could see with her sister as well, using her vision. So we have an overpowered gang that is fighting a villain that has already been vanquished a season ago. You can really tell why the stakes are a bit mismatched, right? So I want to up the scales. I want Vecna to actually be menacing, and I want them to kill these children in front of everyone. Kill 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and to keep some alive, just so you can do the same ending that we have at the end, basically, when we have Derek and you have these two other girls and Holly, of course, and you can have that new Scooby Gang plot still going. But what about the other kids? Like, they don't need all to survive at the end of the day. This would have been incredible from an emotional standpoint. Like, one of the main arguments on why I think this doesn't work is that there is no moral ambiguity. As in, Vecna was killing so many people before, he's not doing it anymore in this season, and our main characters are just too good. This is a problem that is actually quite common when it comes to series that span for a really long time, and very often you end up with heroes that end up like destroying themselves. If you think about Breaking Bad, for example, Eisenberg, he ends up destroying himself. If you think about Dexter Morgan before New Blood and before the new like contemporary reimagining of the character. This is probably why I think that season 3 worked out for so many people, because it had Billy, who was so bad and so evil. And this is also why I'm pretty sure they keep reintroducing like bullies in every single season, because shows are always so much more interesting when there are villains to fight, or when people are just morally gray. They're not just good people. And I feel like they should have established that a little bit more. The fact that 11 ends up like cold-bloodedly killing so many people. For example, the military, where she snaps everyone's neck in season 5 in the last few episodes. Like, that should make people frown. As in, some of the main characters should be like, that was a bit harsh. Like, why did you do that? Like, you just had to put them to sleep. You didn't have to kill them all. And this is one of the main problems I have with these kind of shows, where the characters are just too easy to like, and there is nothing that we have to dislike about them, and basically turns every single character into the same character. This is why I think we should have killed them, and this is why a lot of people have been like, we need to kill off some of these, because they're interchangeable. Even though they're played by different characters, and maybe they fuck with different people, these characters have become interchangeable, especially in those last few seasons. Like, there is none of them that have gone dark, that have strayed away from the group too much. Like, we lost something in season 4 and season 3 as well, where Max, for example, at the beginning, we didn't like her very much. She wasn't like a very nice person to be around with, and that's what made her interesting. And now everyone is exactly the same, and Max has kind of lost most of her edge. If you look at Dustin, for example, Dustin, I feel like, is the only character who has gained some kind of moral ambiguity, and mostly thanks to Eddie. He gives this speech at the end of high school where basically he's like, fuck conformity, we need to be different, we need to do something special with our lives. And then if you think about it, like other people have mentioned it online, we've got like Nancy, who has given up on her studies, as I said before. Steven has stayed exactly the same, and he has no ambitions anymore. Hopper has gone back to being a cop. Elle is basically forced to idle away forever. So what are the risks that these people are taking? Like, I was talking about this with my sister. I was sitting there being like, I hate it when fantasy and sci-fi shows bring back the status quo in a way that everyone becomes boring. Like, all of these people have gone back to a normal life, and it's kind of boring. Like, I want them to do something way more interesting and incredible. Like, be creative. Like, you don't have to be stuck in the 80s and be realistic. You know what I mean? Because I would have wanted Dustin, for example, to go hunting for more creatures from the Upside Down that escaped maybe and that were running around, and to do that with Steve. I wanted maybe for Nancy to do something different than just being a journalist. It made sense for Jonathan to be a filmmaker, but at the end of the day, those are just normal everyday jobs. Like, can you imagine? It would be almost like in Star Wars, where we've got all of these people who have gone through the rebellion, they've fought wars with the Empire, they've seen like creatures that I've never seen before, and they've flown spaceship, and then the final few scenes, you get these people being like, okay, now everything is done, I can go back to being a farmer. It's so boring. It's so incredibly boring. Like, there should have been a new status quo, that's what I mean. And the problem is also the fact that Elle leaving brings back normal life for everyone. So what does it say about Elle's character? She came here just to disrupt everyone's life. She came here to get people killed, to traumatize people with like these creatures that were hunting for her, the military that were hunting for her, that destroyed and occupied the town. It was all because of Elle. And guess what? Once Elle disappears, it's all back to normal. The town starts becoming exactly like it was before. The kids are going back to playing D&D and not having actual real adventures in real time. And I don't know, is this the message that we want to send people? I was actually thinking about other like characters that have tried like to off themselves basically because they thought that they were not good enough for the world. The only one I could think of where it didn't actually work out like he wanted to, it's BoJack Horseman. There is this part in the final few episodes of BoJack Horseman where basically he tries to kill himself, and he realizes that he shouldn't be doing that. Even though he's a shitty person, even though he's like destroyed the lives of most of his friends, and he has a hard time changing and becoming a better person, he can still try. And this is why BoJack Horseman is one of the best series ever, because they make him doubt until the very, very last second that maybe he shouldn't be alive, but they never actually committed to that idea, and they prove to us that people can still change and people can still become better people. And it's not what happens with Dany from Game of Thrones. It's not what happens with Jinx, because she doesn't have the chance to do that, to prove to everyone that she's not a Jinx at the end of the day. Everyone keeps going with their lives besides Eleven, who is either dead or she has to live her life by herself forever. Honestly, like, I miss Elle having a laugh with her friends. I miss to see her smiling. And I'm pretty sure that Millie Bobby Brown agrees with what I'm saying with all of us as well. And that's why her performance suffered at the end of the day, because she knew where everything was heading and she didn't agree with that, with the way that her character was changing just to bring back the status quo to a little town in America. Anyways, those are my thoughts for Stranger Things, and I think I've covered most of the things out there. I'm gonna stop looking at tweets because honestly this is gonna drive me insane. Also, this video is gonna be incredibly long to edit. Wow. If you like this video, here down at the bottom as usual, I'm gonna be putting all of the other videos where I talked about other things and shows like that, maybe stuff that you can find on Netflix, why not. And here at the top I'm gonna put you the video that is coming out next week, which was supposed to come out this week, but I had to change things around because I had to talk about Stranger Things at least once in my life, because it's been a big part of my life at the end of the day. Having said that, don't forget to smash the like button. Every single time that you do that, you make sure that a new Demogorgon spawns and is adopted by a loving family.
Can I count on you?
Wouldn't you like that? Wouldn't you do like a demo dog at your place to nurture them and to make them feel loved so that maybe they don't kill people? That would be incredible. I really hope that you get one sent to you by the post. I'm Patrick, and this is Torn Apart.
Standing by the wall, and the gun